Welcome everybody. Am I loud enough about the mic or not? We're okay? Okay. We are being welcome to the second general meeting for Library Press. This is also being simulcast out over the interwebs to however many people are joining us.
We have two. We have viewers from Editorial and YouTube.
Excellent. So just so you'll know, and we are recording this so that for people who can't be there, they can review it. So I'm Mike Roy. I'm Dean of Library at Newberry College, and I'm currently chair of the board of the Library Oversight Committee. And I'm going to talk just a little bit. But before I talk, I'm going to play a video about Library Press.
Library Press is committed to the proposition that the publication of excellent scholarship should not depend on the ability of a book to command sales in the market, or the Library Press.
I think first and foremost is the collaborative nature of the project. I like the idea that it's a collaboration between faculty, librarians, and actually the administrations of a number of institutions who are happy to go forward with what I sort of also see as very exciting, very innovative. We want to make academic research something that is more practical use. So we're not just getting further and further into our silos. We're trying to make it something where the language is accessible to a larger number of people. The ideas are more obviously relevant to a larger group of people.
One of our cardinal missions is to encourage our students to be lifelong learners. That's what liberal arts institutions are about. Press that's linked to that kind of a mission is very important for us. You're not in it for the money, but you're in it to spread knowledge.
We're calling it a liberal arts oriented, liberal arts colleges. What that really means is accessible to a larger group of people. Not as much jargon, ideas that are more explicitly connected. It's not assumed that the listener already knows those connections. They are connected that we make explicitly in that.
I have an opportunity to read the new section of readers that I might have ever been able to reach. And that's really important to me because I'm writing for another society. And I think that's why we should engage with my work.
The students we teach have grown up in the digital era. And therefore we have to meet the students where they are. And it's really something to tell the student, pull out your computer, let's go to this website, let's look at this document, analyze it, and discuss it.
I think most authors are going to like the idea that someone's going to be with them all the way along, from the very beginning, to help them get is to have larger audience. Within academia, if you could get frustrated with that book that you spent the last several years on, the paper you've been working on, it's your big magnum opus, is something that's going to be read by this tiny group of specialists within your field. It doesn't have to be that way. And we can take the new knowledge that we're creating and make it something that's more accessible. That includes the way it's presented, and also it being freely available.
It's innovative, it's new. And I think that Lever will offer them more opportunities and flexibility in terms of presenting and preserving the full spectrum of their scholarship instead of a small slice.
To find out more about Library Press, including how to submit a publication proposal and how to support our work, please visit librarypress.org.
I'm afraid I might be wearing the same shirt. I'm on tap to sort of talk a little bit about governance and some of the administrative things that happened. And then some of my colleagues in the effort will come up and talk about some of the editorial work, some of the technology work, and then some of the work around community engagement. And the community engagement section in particular, we're really hoping to hear from you about ideas for how to connect the work we're doing to the campus, the member campuses. So the first thing I wanted to do was just remind folks who may not, or either folks who are new or folks who may not remember, just the basic structure of Lever. So it's a three-way partnership. So there's a partnership between Amherst College Press and Michigan Publishing, and with Amherst College Press really being kind of the front of the house, the acquisition side, the editorial side, and Michigan Publishing largely doing the kind of back of the house actual technology work and working to take these ideas and manuscripts and turn them into our finalized publications. It's more complicated than that, but that's kind of the basic division of labor. And working within a platform called Fulcrum, which you'll learn about more later on in the presentation. And we have an editorial board that's drawn from the member institutions, and you heard from them in that video that we produced at the last editorial board meeting that we had face-to-face this summer. And then there's an oversight committee. We don't rate actual photographs. We are mostly icons. But that would be us. Avatars. There we go. There's a better word for that. And on the question of the members of Lever that you'll be getting an email, the slate of candidates. You'll see Martha Gerner is, I think, in the room. She's in the house. She gets an asterisk because she's a return. She's already been on the board, and the rest of the folks listed here are who would have not been on the board before. You'll see that two of them are actually not from Oberlin Group schools, which is just a reminder that Lever Press includes liberal arts colleges that are not part of the Oberlin Group as well. So anyway, this is just you'll get email reminders about this, but we wanted to call attention to this.
$170,000 a year to work with. That's a 5-year commitment. We're in our second year now. We're in Q3 of the second year. We operate on sort of on the calendar year, so we're coming towards the end of the year. And we spent only about 30% of our year. The reason for that is because the budget that we have, it accounts both for the operations of the press, so staff who work on it, travel to get to all of you on your campuses and talk to you, work to make that thing happen, and then resources that we have in reserve for actually producing the books. Because these books are open access, we're not looking to recover our investment through sales as a traditional publisher does. We're funding the cost of making the works up front, and that's really what you all have contributed to and committed funds to. You will know we have not made books yet. That is all in the pipeline. You're going to hear more about that in a little bit. So that's why we are so far underspending our budget. We're holding those funds so that when the books start to hit, we're ready to produce them. That entails copy editing work, production work, layout work. Could entail printing costs if print is appropriate for the book. Might not. Could entail some web design work. All those kinds of things are the costs of going to producing the books themselves. Mark or Mike, do you want to talk about this in the next part? Yeah. So Mark is going to talk about the sort of bigger picture of the investment in this whole endeavor.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming to the meeting. I'm Mark Eddington, and I'm the publisher of Lever Press. I'm also the director of the Amherst College Press. The point of this bullet here is simply to say some of you have just come from a meeting on the 2.5% for Open initiative. And if that is a matter of interest to you, we wanted you to know how is your investment in Lever helping you move toward that objective. So we can provide you with data about that question if you're interested, but the thing we just want you to know up front is that across all of the 45 turns out to be about 1/4 of 1%. So you're getting a little bit of the way toward that 2.5% simply by investing in lever, okay? So if you want more information about that, many of you are doing other things for open, and so those things accumulate, and your number is going to build toward 2.5%. We just want you to know we're helping you. Helping you get it. And also the program that we have for Lever Press. I want to introduce my colleague Beth Locos, who's joined us in the last few months. We're going to give you an update on the dashboard that we have of work and look at the Lever Press model author contract. And finally, we're going to have a little news for you about the work we're doing in peer review. I am delighted formally to introduce to all of you our senior acquisition editor, Beth Locos, who comes to us from the State University. The happiest day of my recent life has been the day that Beth agreed to sign aboard with us. So intent was I on making sure that she said yes, that when it came down to making the offer, I got in my car and drove to Albany and said, please meet me for coffee because I want to get on my knees and say, Beth, come and join us. So she has done that, and you'll hear more from her about the work she has done, but it is my one is a thing called editorial process, peer review, and acquisition. And it is a document written by our editorial board that lays out a very sort of clear process that we use to relate between the acquisition team, which is pretty much myself and Beth, and the editorial board. How do we engage with them? How do we bring ideas to them? What's the nature of the decisions that we ask them to make? How do we basically divide authority in the world of the editorial side of Lever Press? So we wanted, because we have a deep, deep commitment to transparency, we wanted to share that document with all of you. So you get to see how this thing works, what the charter of our work with the editorial board is. All right, Beth, want to talk about the dashboard?
It's you, yeah. So this is the dashboard for what we have in the pipeline right now. So I thought I'd give you a little kind of glimpse at what we're working on and sort of the different disciplines that are represented and geographic focus for some of these projects. And I can say that all of these are innovative in either content or form, or some of them in both. But they're really covering quite a wide range of topics. So the first column that you'll see, and I don't know how well you can read that, but in general, I can tell you that the campuses, the Lever campuses that are represented on this dashboard so far are Union, Oberlin, Clark Atlanta, St. Olaf, and Skidmore. So we have some good representation from actually the contributing campuses. The second column here is for pending proposals. And we have 11 total in that category, and the topics range from a history of feminist presses that will incorporate some archival material that will be a very good tool, of course, for teaching about the history of feminism in general in the U.S., but in particular about publishing and feminism. We have studies on international students at liberal arts colleges, and also study abroad programs at liberal arts colleges. The geographic reach for these proposals, in terms of where they're studying and what they're studying, are from France to Japan to Northern Ireland and the US, so quite a broad range. The disciplines that are represented in that category are art history, disability studies, rhetoric, communication, sociology, literary studies, and women's studies.
So again, a nice mix of different approaches, different methodology. Then the next column you'll see is received proposals, so things that we actually have in hand. And we have 10 total at this point. And again, a really broad range of topics. So one is a study on African American women icons that is sort of a guide for mentorship programs, and also very easily could be incorporated into a syllabus. And then we have ranging to an ethnography in rural China. So again, the geographic reach is from, we have represented here Germany, Iran, Alaska, quite broad. And then the fields that we're looking at for the proposals we have in hand are ecology, the arts, media studies, gender studies, classics, and anthropology. The following column is works that have been discussed at our editorial board. So things that we've already sort of gotten in the works with talking through production issues, maybe scholarly content issues. And those are, one is a project on Shakespeare's sea creatures. Another is a joint faculty-student research project that looks at sex work in Paris in the 19th century. And then something that's really exciting that we would like to expand our reach in is a project on open access musicology. And again, it's another project that's a multi-part series on topics that would be very, very useful for the classroom. And then finally, one of the last columns you'll see here, or the second class, is proposals that are out for peer review. All are from full professors, which is a very good sign when we're thinking about really establishing our reputation. One is from Clark Atlanta. Again, really a nice connection to the contributing Weber campuses. And the final column, which is our very good news to announce, is works that we've made a contracting decision on. So we actually have, moving forward and getting contracts, which is very exciting. So we'll have some more things making that leap towards publication.
Thanks, Beth. Any questions about this? This is we're sort of showing you here a screenshot of an internal tool called Asana that the whole team uses to keep track of projects as they sort of progress across the screen. So as we move into the next columns, what we'll be seeing is completed works that have been sent out for peer review, works that are presented to the editorial board for a final decision, and then that last column you can barely see on the right-hand side will be the point at which we hand off to Michigan for production. And then it enters another Asana board, which is the production side. Yeah, Alexa.
Something you would share with them?
Probably not. And the reason is there's a confidential nature to the conversations with authors. What we're not showing you here are the names of these authors and the materials that they've submitted. When we feel comfortable about releasing names as forthcoming titles is after the editorial board has made a publishing decision. So we'll keep you posted, Mike will keep us posted about the numbers of things that are in each category so we can get a general sense of progress. But there's this sort of confidentiality that we're concerned about, yeah.
If this is our only chance to see this, you think maybe we can make it a little bigger so we can read it?
Yeah,
but I can't.
We can try to send a copy of the screenshot out too. I'm not sure what button to push to make like. We're not successfully turning off lights.
No, take it back.
Share the screenshot.
We can do that.
In an email.
Is that okay? Okay, we'll send that out.
But I would ask if there really are confidentiality
That's a Beth project. This is a Mark project. There's one on here, like there's a Mike Roy project. That's our quick way of just visually saying who owns this project. Was there another question? Yeah.
I just want to know if we were reaching out beyond the members to and attracting proposals from others.
Yes. The answer is yes. We're seeing proposals that come to us from outside the membership. What Beth sort of adduced for you was proposals that we've seen from within the membership. So yeah.
Do we know where, like, how people are coming out about the press and, You're all the presentation at that point.
Well,
so we don't have.
We're going to get to a point where we talk about sort of what we've been doing to get word out. So, okay. So, we said that there was news. The first piece of news is we have a work under contract. The second piece of news is the video that we started with, you just saw the premiere of it. And if you now go to the front page of the Leverpress website, that's on our front page. So the very first thing people will see when they come to Lever now is a video with us. The third piece of news is it's with its authors. Ready?
Okay, so some of you have a folder that you might have grabbed on your way in. If you didn't, you can grab it on your way out. There's a stack of blue folders there, but inside it you'll have a sample that you can take home and look at more closely. This is an agreement that is specific to Lever. It was by the the General Counsel's Office at the University of Michigan, and based on sort of that would work well for approach the whole idea of a publishing agreement a bit differently. It is structured as an agreement, a legal agreement that is pretty brief. It's about 2.5 pages, or 2 pages, that gets kind of all the terms, the boilerplate, the legal stuff documented up front, and then supplemented by these exhibits that are a bit more flexible. The ones you have here, it's just all like template versions. And the exhibits are where you can have more flexibility. If your work doesn't look like a book, if it's a website, if it's something else, it can be sort of described, whatever the nature of it is, in an exhibit, publishing schedule, all the sorts of details, third-party permissions, things like that that might really vary wildly as we publish in different formats and different disciplines, are not codified so firmly in a very fat agreement. It's very way down the line legally that they can be described sort of afterward. So highlights of this agreement that I would point out are, number one is we put up here, the author retains the copyright in the work. That's a practice that Lever will adhere to, and that we have sort of built into the contract here. The relationship between the publisher and the author is we've tried to describe it in a way that's simple and friendly. It's laid out as what the publisher commits to do for the author, and then what we're asking the author to promise to the publisher. In this case, Lever will use Creative Commons licenses. This agreement could accommodate any sort of license that you want to wish, but that's what we're looking at here. Another practice that Lever has built into sort of its systems is a one-time honorarium for authors, as opposed to ongoing royalty payments. The idea here is that it is compensating authors up front, probably more than what they would earn in royalties anyway. And so that's meant to be friendly to authors. It's meant to also simplify the business of the press so that there's not royalty tracking going on for years and years and years. What else? It's easy to terminate. It's meant to just sort of be not frightening and not threatening to authors, while also being fair to them and fair to the press. As I described, the exhibits are pretty flexible. That's where you can describe if this thing is a website or a book. How it works, put in a publishing schedule. And so if you have this template to work from, this sort of model, what we're getting into the business of now is figuring out how do we actually customize it for an individual work. So as we have these first couple of titles coming through, we're getting into the weeds of like, okay, what will the schedule be? When do we expect it to be delivered? And then what will we commit back to the author about when they can expect to see the next step. So going from a model to a real contract is yet another adventure, but we feel this is a good foundation for us to be working from. The model, as it was originally developed, again, it came out of work that was done at the University of Michigan Library and at the Emory Library or Press, I can't quite remember. And then, as I said, Jack Bernard sort of took that work and reinvented it for the purposes of Glover. Are there questions about this document at this stage? Yes, Martha.
I just want to know, because I know I'll get questions about this. In section 6B, I grant to the publisher the exclusive license to commercialize. Examples of that, like a print copy.
That would be like selling print copies. Yeah. So in the case of Lever, the whole work will be freely available online. People can use it, but if appropriate, we could also sell print versions of it. Yeah.
How will we be defining honoraria?
Did we set it out as $1,000 per author per book?
We
had a
have-
plan in our original.
We have an
model.
average number that we budget. That number will vary a little bit around the seniority of the author and also the nature of the project. So if it's a multi-author work that we really want to land, it might go up a little bit. If it's a junior scholar, it might go down a little bit. But the average per title is $1,000.
How does that compare with what people might expect to make in a University Press contract?
I can say I worked at City Press for almost 7 years, and I can say that we stopped actually cutting checks for anything under $100 because it was so common that people would get like $30 checks and not cash them, and it was a nightmare for accounts. So that is, in some cases, if you have a scholarly monograph, that is probably more than they would ever make on the life cycle of the book. So.
I've heard from authors that their contracts say they receive royalties only on sales over 800. And now with the average sale of an academic book at 200, this would mean we're paying a lot more than what they're getting.
Standard University Press contracts are around, the breakpoint is usually 700 or 800. You can negotiate that, of course, but yeah, there are plenty of fields, Latin American studies, gender studies, that books rarely sell over that, so they're not making.
The simple answer, it compares very favorably.
Very, especially for certain disciplines, very favorably.
Yeah.
So I like to think of this contract as sort of one example of the way that Lever is contributing to this whole conversation about scholarly publishing and open access and digital scholarship. So it's not just about the works that will come out, but changing the infrastructure of how this work is done. So we're glad to share this with you as an example. I don't think it's yet linked from our website, but we'll make sure that it gets up there. You're welcome to share it. Our hope is that this itself might be something that is of interest to authors or to librarians or faculty as you know, a sign of progress and in this whole sort of very problematic area of scholarly publishing, and something that might interest authors in working with us. So feel free to get in touch if you have questions about it, and it's something that is one of the things we've been working on in the last year.
And I'll just make a comment that many of us, when we first started, were dead set against partnering with an existing press, because we thought, you know, the press, all of these presses are moribund and stuck in the past. This kind of work, we would never have done all by ourselves. So this is just another example of why it's so great that we partnered in Michigan on this particular project.
Thing about this slide, which is stipulating what the Creative Commons license should be. We're saying we have a set of tools to offer you under the Creative Commons licenses, and we recommend, based on the nature of this work, that you should consider a license that looks like X. But this last thing here about derivative use, we find in Jason Mattel, who's on our editorial board from Middlebury College and is in the world of film, media, and visual culture studies. His message to us is, you know, in my field, we want people to make derivative use of our work, so please don't make me use that license. So we're just we're working with authors on this. The only thing we are being very clear about is you keep the copyright, you license the work to us as a publisher. So we have a new video, we have a contracted work, we have a new contract. Now we have one last little piece of news to talk about. You can tell from the times that you listen to me, I am like totally initiative. I think what we're doing is important and is going to make a large impact. And I could go to a conference a week and speak on a panel a week about how there is no iron law of nature that relates open access as a business outcome to a rigorous peer review process, and it still wouldn't change anything. We know that that's true, and our editorial board knows that it's true. And beginning in about December of last year, we began a conversation around the table of the editorial board about how we could do something significant and substantive to move ourselves out there as an open access press with strong commitments around peer review. So the board began talking about, why don't we just say what our commitments are? And more than that, why don't we just say what our guidelines for peer review will be? Because we live in this world where, you know, you're gonna, if you read anything about scholarly communication in the New York Times and the Economist, it's gonna be bad news. at least for open access. It's gonna be, you know, something like this most recent Sokol hoax, or it's gonna be the predatory press problem, or it's gonna be, again, in the New Yorker, that same problem. When things appear in XKCD, which is my favorite source for things about bad publishing, I know that we are in a bad place. So we're dealing with this attitude. And by the way, there are 6 billion reasons for Elsevier to want that reputation to stick. Okay? So we have to be clear that this is not true. But how are we going to do that? We need to have clear guidelines about what we mean by peer review, what the object is we're going to review, and then we have to say what process of review did we use and why did we choose it. This is the sort of meat of the conversation we had around the editorial board table, and the result is this.
Also in your blue folders.
Also in your blue folders. Now, this may not seem like news to you. To me, this is huge news, and here's why. I don't know of another member of the Association of American University Presses that makes public what its commitments about peer review are, but we do. And this is on our webpage. You can read it there. But we did one thing more, because we talked about among ourselves this thing. Some of you may know this document, the 10 Principles for Emerging Systems of Scholarly Publishing. It came out in 2000, back in the Stone Age of the transition to digital and scholarly publishing. And it was this effort by ARL and AAU to just say, look, we don't know what the outcome of all this churn is going to be, but we know kind of what the rules of the road need to be. And one of the rules of the road was, what it means to be scholarly is there has to be a process for evaluating the work, peer review, and there has to be a way of telling the reader what review the work has undergone. Do we do that? I mean, how do we do that, other than putting the name on the spine of a university press? Well, we need to create a way of doing that signaling, and we already have one. The problem is it lives in the realm of rights. Tools given to us by the Creative Commons people that tell a reader very quickly, here's what you can do with this work. So our thought was, why don't we do the same in the world of peer review? What if we did this? Or better, what if we did this and said to people what we had reviewed? So for example, we could say, this manuscript was done on the basis, we reviewed the manuscript in a single blind process. Or we reviewed the proposal in a double blind process. and the manuscript in a peer-to-peer process. That might be an appropriate process for an edited volume, where you're having the authors of a work review each other's work. Or this manuscript was simultaneously subjected to a double-blind peer review and an open review. This would be the badge that appeared on Kathleen Fitzpatrick's book, Find Obsolescence. That's exactly what NYU Press did. Or, in the world of the social sciences, here's a manuscript that was given single-blind review and a data set that was also reviewed in a double-blind fashion. If you ever want to have a really interesting hour-long conversation on the phone, call up the people at Creative Commons and say to them, I have an idea. I would like to make derivative use of your intellectual property. May I do that? That was a really interesting conversation. But they took it aboard and they said, let me get back to you. And they did, and they said, you know what? We get it. We get it because we see how this helps move the needle toward making open the standard, and that's what we want to see happen in Creative Commons. So here's what we did. First of all, I love this. I want to go to Moscow to see this. This is the monument to the anonymous peer reviewer. It really exists, okay? I gave this talk that I just gave to you in Austin, Texas in June at the Association of American University Press's annual meeting. And I showed them those little buttons and I told them the story about Creative Commons. And when I walked out the door, about an hour later, I had an email from my colleague, Amy Brand, who is the director of the MIT Press. And she said, this is my problem too. It's not just a problem for open access presses, it's a problem for all presses. Why? Because suddenly we live in a fact-free universe. And all scholars, how do we, and so, dear friends, Lever Press started something that attracted the attention of one of the best presses on the planet, and together, Amy Brand and I wrote a grant to the Open Society Foundation to say, please help us get this movement started. And here's the fourth piece of news. Today, we received the contract from the Open Society Foundations to finance that. So in January of next year, a meeting will be held at the House of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in Cambridge, where we will pull together leaders from publishing, leaders from learned societies, leaders from the world of libraries, thought leaders in scholarly communications, and we will bring to them what? The document that the Lever Press editorial board wrote. And we will say, we think this should be the standard. And we think that behind it should be this system for there in the world and say to publish. Okay, Fulcrum.
How will Fulcrum support?
Oh, sorry. What was that, guys?
Wow, nice job, Mark. So to shift gears a little bit, I'd like to tell you about what's going on at Michigan Publishing, where we're building the platform, which we call Fulcrum, that will be where books will live, where people will find the works. I'm going to show you in a second a video that is just sort of a peek at one part of the functionality we're building, just to hopefully get a more concrete sense of how it works, sort of the direction that we're going. But first I wanted to just sort of set a little bit of groundwork. There are, in your blue folders, there's a card, so you can find your way to the Fulcrum website. There's a promotional video there that looks very much like the one press we already saw. My guess is the same company that did all the work. And it's different from what I'm about to show you in a minute. Fulcrum is an open source software platform that we're building. It came out of the Fedora repository infrastructure and what used to be called the Hydra community. It's now called Sandera. Hydra was forced to change its name. And you know they're not. Stability, preservability, for infrastructure, of digital scholarship, so it remains available for the long term. Discoverability of open access and digital scholarship that doesn't flow through the same supply chains that libraries use to obtain books and obtain catalog records. How do we make these works appear in those places? And integration with the community, use of open source platforms, adherence to common standards, HTML5, EPUB 3, all around. So that's what we're doing. It's very infrastructure, easy to use, attract. Out to something findable and usable for readers. Someone might use it and interact with it. Usable functionality. We hope to do more of these kinds of demos as more things get built out. But this is just to give a concrete sense of where things are right now.
Sorry, we're going to start about 3 seconds into this. My apologies.
That's okay.
How will books enter the Fulcrum ebook reader? Here we present the allows the reader to navigate to various sections of the book. Notice that the title bar at the top of the screen updates with the name of this section. Paging through this section, we come to a piece of embedded media. In the print edition, this would be a still image. In a portable version of an ebook, this would be a low-resolution video in the standard HTML5 player. Here, in the Fulcrum ebook reader, we stream the video through Able Player, rich with accessibility features, including keyboard controls and customized caption playback. Users can link to the individual record for any media embedded in the ebook to view the full details for this piece of media, including usage statistics, with more details to appear here soon, and full technical information, and, where provided, a full transcript. Social sharing features allow the reader to discuss this work in their own communities. And the persistent citation URL ensures that future readers will be able to find their way back to the work on Fulcrum. Back in the ebook reader, searching within the book allows the reader to find instances of their search terms throughout the text, highlighted for convenience. Other options allow the user to increase or decrease the text size, or to switch from page turning to scrolling. Here's an example of the IIIF image viewer, allowing the user to zoom into the full resolution of a still image. Citations for the book can be generated in a number of common formats and automatically copied to the clipboard for use in other citation management tools. The Fulcrum ebook reader is built with a completely responsive design, so it's usable in a number of different devices and screen dimensions. Now you've seen the flexibility that Fulcrum brings to a fully digital monograph. Watch for future screencasts to see what more Fulcrum can do.
So as I said, that was a pretty typical book, something you read with media integrated. Maybe it doesn't feel quite so dynamic, but what's been really interesting is figuring out the ways to sort of explode the parts of it, for one thing. Have the video itself be citable and can be described with however much information the author wants to include. Some of the really challenging and interesting conversations that we're having are with those faculty who really are at the edge of new forms of scholarship. Jason Tell on our editorial board is a great representative of those. We talked to other folks who are interested in using platforms like Scalar or already are using those platforms. And we're in this really interesting space of recognizing where those boundaries are being pushed, but then also holding firm the idea of preservability, stability, and how do we bridge this gap? How do we allow for innovation and sort of breaking the bounds of the work while also saying, we want to put, make a promise when we publish work that it's still going to be there in 10 years, in 15 years. If someone can cite it and get back to it, it'll still be found. So we're talking to folks at Scalar, we're talking to folks at the University of Minnesota Press, where they're working on Manifold, some of the other folks doing different versions of digital publishing platforms to see how we can offer things that might work in parallel, have a permanent version and sort of dynamic version. These are all options that we're exploring in order to allow for that kind of creativity and flexibility of the author while ensuring that the thing that Letterpress approves and puts out there and backs is going to be there, findable, citable, stable. So it's exciting. There's more to come with Fulcrum. The thing we're really pushing for right now that we know people want and that I priority for us are things like timelines and maps. Those I think will go a long way to allow people to offer different presentations of their scholarship. But more to come. We have about 6 months left on the first sort of grant that has supported this platform so far, and we're going through the second, and simultaneously working on a business model to support that platform in other ways. So Lever is one client that will be hosted here, but there's a lot else going on with Fulcrum, so we're about to that. Yeah.
Is the ability to annotate and to take notes going to be incorporated in a future version?
It will be, yeah. Most of our work and sort of partnership with annotation thus far has been with the Hypothesis tool, which is a browser-based tool that uses the sort of newly codified web standard for open annotation. So it's a layer that happens in the browser sort of on top of the work. And I think there are decisions yet to be made about how far outside the book that lives versus how deeply we as a publisher want to like embed that technology inside the book. There are some choices there, but I think that's certainly the flavor of annotation we would use, an open web-based standard, and then sort of picking which client hypothesis likely and how best to integrate it into the work.
Good.
Okay.
Great. We know what we've been doing. We've been on your campuses making presentations. First of all, we Lever. I've just come from being at the University of Puget Sound. Beth had just come from being at Whitman College. We do quite a bit of this. We also represent you at a lot of professional meetings, some in the scholarly communication space, Library Publishing Coalition, ACRL, some more like in the academic space, MLA, American Studies in the USA, and some really in the space of our institution's leaders. So I'll be speaking in November to a meeting of chief academic officers organized by the CIC. We have begun doing webinars. You may have been participant in one or more of them, and we
October 24th is at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so do the math. And it's representatives from Letterpress, from Luminous in California Press. Is the new initiative from the University, the Big Ten, what's it called? University. Pardon? University of
California.
No, yes, the CIC group, Luminous, California. Then there's a new initiative that's being funded. And then who's the fourth?
Knowledge Unlatched.
Right. Okay.
Right. Great. And already we have 200 and some people signed up to take part. Yeah. So tell your friends.
If you haven't signed up, it's not too late. And I think the link is on the Facebook page.
Yep.
Room will hold 500 people.
So just to let you know, while we've been doing things like making videos and getting peer review funded and all that sort of stuff, we are not sitting in our hands. So we've been to Denison, there's Becky going to Denison, Mark's been at a few places on campuses, Charles has been at a few places, Beth has been at a few places just in 2 months. Plus we've been to quite a few professional meetings, so there's a lot of stickers on our backs is kind of what this says, and we are out there and we want to be out there. So we would love to come to your campus. If there's a way for us to do it and an interest on your campus to do it, please let us know, because that's part of what we want to do. This is the Lever Press YouTube page.
Yeah, this is just something I pulled together quickly. We have a YouTube channel now, as we're producing videos. I've put together a playlist of webinars. Terry has organized and hosted the last couple and put them to a playlist down there, Lever Press webinars. I'm also pulling together media come out, including this session here, so you can come back to them or share them with your friends or anything like that.
Okay. Any questions for what we've said so far? Yeah, Tara.
Well, congratulations on all this work, and thank you. And I'm particularly interested in sort of the timeline now between sort of due to availability of the title. So we have a contract. Can you speak to that, sort of what that framework is?
This is where I'm really happy we hired Beth.
Yeah, in some ways, I can say this will be a non-answer because knowing how long the process will take is like what we do with crystal ball. Sure. We give reviewers a certain amount of time to look at either a proposal or to look at a full manuscript. They can be like students, I would say, where they ask for an extension, they fall off the face of the earth. So it's a little bit hard to project out in terms of that. I can also say we're setting dates now. The work that we have is to set dates for complete manuscripts because we have a lot of proposals, but we don't have hard dates necessarily for the complete manuscript. And once we have those, then it'll be easier to say, okay, best case scenario, it'll be out for 10 weeks for review. Often we'll have this amount of time to make the revisions. And then, final board approval, we meet every month, which is actually excellent in terms of timeline. And then we'll have hard dates.
Sure. Using the PC of the contract on, you have a target time when that will be available, for example.
That's
the one that we actually have a contract on.
Could I give you, actually I'll give you 2 examples because they're very different examples. The one we have a contract on is a co-authored work, so 2 people writing together a single monograph. When we write a contract there, we want to include in that contract some goalposts about time, delivery time, right? So I think in this case, it'll be reasonable to give them basically 6 months to write this. And then we'll get it reviewed within a month, I should think, a monograph length work. It could be, depending on its length, it's not going to be a 100,000 word monograph, but so just stepping that out, we would be in a position to make a decision, publish or no, on that work, hopefully 8 months from the time we get the contract. Here's a different case, the open access musicology case that we spoke of on the dashboard. That is meant to be a resource for the teaching of musicology that is going to get built over time. So the vision of the editors here is a work that will ultimately encompass something like 30 individual contributions, at least, as a work to be made available to teachers. But it's not going to be 30 individual contributions that hit at once.
Sure.
So what we've been negotiating with them right now is, what do we feel like is a comfortable number at a minimum to release the first sort of version of the work and then build out from there. We think it's probably not less than 8 articles. So we have to sort of establish goalposts for when those 8 articles will be due. We think it'll be June 30th. And then we sort of kick in a review process from there. Open access musicology is an interesting project for another reason. It looks a little bit to us in editorial world like working on a journal. And the reason is the editors of that work have come to us with an editorial committee of their own. So the first negotiation was to make sure we were comfortable with the composition of the editorial committee. And then, having done that, we write with them a memorandum of understanding, which essentially will be in the form of a contract, to say to them, all right, we need to know you're going to employ our peer review guidelines because we've told you what they are. We need to know what your process is going to be. And here's what we want you to deliver to us in the case of every article. We want to see the revised manuscript, the reviews, and a summary statement from the editors about the work so that we know you've done your work, and then what we're blessing is the process. Okay? But we are in a way delegating part of our editorial authority to this committee, so we want to have a very good relationship with them, and one that's governed by some clear documentation. So those are two kind of different examples.
And I can say one other thing is that some of the things you saw on the dashboard are project is 2/3 written, for example. So it's not going to be 6 months until we get the complete manuscript. So things are at just all different states. It's constantly juggling everything from an idea that's sort of a twinkle in somebody's eye to a complete manuscript. So it's a mix on that dashboard.
And we're throwing a penny from the production side of things too. At a sort of typical university press, it's pretty common to have, from the time something lands in production, about a year timeline to get the book into press. We're working with the publishing services team at Michigan. They try to keep things really pretty neat and pretty sort of replicable. Their usual sort of production timeline for work is about 4 to 6 months. So if something is, has made it all the way through the editorial process, been approved and goes to them, then it enters the process of copy editing and putting it all together. I think if we're being realistic, the first few works are probably going to take some extra, we'll be figuring things out, we'll be engaging the authors in the process, it might be a bit slower, but when we have, working templates in place for works and standing relationships with the copy editors and designers and people who are going to do this work, I think about 4 to 6 months. So much quicker than a sort of traditional press, but still takes a long time for the whole thing to come together.
Yes.
So I'm trying to remember, there were some earlier milestones or goals, objectives, whichever word you want to use, with regard to the press and what the outcome was that we were expecting, say, at the end of year 1, 2, 3, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, we're in year 2 or 3 now, 1 and 2, I don't know.
We are, when we leave this meeting, we're walking into year 2, 3, 2.
We're finishing year 2.
We're finishing year 2.
We're walking into 3.
Yeah.
So my question to you then is that, because I see that, I want to think that there was some vision of like 10 or
Yes.
something like that. So tell me about that if you can, and what have been the challenges since we haven't been able to achieve that particular milestone,
yep.
and what do you think that means going forward? And understanding the vagaries of time and people.
Yeah. I'll speak very candidly, and then I'll ask my colleagues to do the same. As you know, we on the Amherst side come into this having ourselves just started a press, or more accurately, restarted an existing press. And one of the things that we've learned from that experience is, in the world of scholarly publishing, about the hardest thing to do is to be new, because it's such a prestige-driven thing. People just think in terms of the age of the press and the reputation and status of the press. So we have to do so many things at once. We have to make the case for why we're doing this, for what we're doing, for the quality of what our peer review process is going to be, for our impact on the scholarly communications landscape, and we have to attract authors. So we are behind where I want to be. What I believe to be true is, as you saw in that dashboard, the momentum is clearly building. We were nowhere close to that at this time last year. And I think that that will continue. And in 2 words, the reason is Beth Bulokros. Yeah. So we are now. we are going to get to the target that we set for the total outcome of this in the pilot project. I have no doubt about that.
Within that time?
Which is, remind me, 60 titles in 5 years.
60 and 5?
Yeah.
So 60 and 5 more, or 60 in the next 2?
No. No. Quickly. Structured our budget is $16,700. It sounds like a lot of money to make a book until you realize that every time the Mellon Foundation gives somebody else a grant to study how much it costs to make a scholarly monograph, they keep getting the same number, and the number is $24,000 a title. So we're well below average. And part of the reason for that is when you take out of the business process paying somebody royalties, you also take out the whole function in the business of the person who has to monitor sales and write those checks. And that actually saves money. So, you know, if you begin like reinventing the business model from the beginning, you can change that number. But to come directly to your question, we are not on schedule yet, but we're going to get there. Yeah, Diane.
I would just add, as just a word of encouragement, that your little peer review branding symbols thing, I think is going to bump up your prestige index significantly. As long as that word gets out, it sounds like you're on that way.
If we get this right, here's what it will do. First of all, which is what I want it to do, it levels the playing field. Because when I go to faculty and when I speak to chief academic officers, and I say to them, okay, tell me what we have to do to make the works we publish the equivalent of the materials published by Yale, Cornell, Stanford, Harvard to be included in a promotion tenure package. And the answer is, well, obviously, peer review. Okay, well, what is the peer review process that they use? Well, I don't know, they just do. Okay, well, I can tell you what ours is, right? And by the way, here's a little button to tell you that we did it on everything we published. So if we start this practice of being transparent about peer review, everybody else is going to have to do. This actually happened to me. Becky knows the story because she was at this meeting. We first sort of ran this idea out in a presentation at the Library Publishing Coalition meeting in Baltimore that took place right before ACRL this year. And one of the people in the audience was Dennis Boyd, who's the director of the University of Wisconsin Press. Okay, so I ran through my slides, and then people got up at the microphones and they started asking questions. And Dennis Boyd stands up and says, so I see what you're doing here, and I like it, but I know that if you do this, I'll have to do this too. And I said, Dennis, that is exactly what I want to have happen. So here's the other thing that will interestingly get flushed out of this if this becomes a standard. First of all, we level that playing field, like I said, and that's the most important objective for us as a new entrant in open access press. But it will also begin to reveal how much of what university presses do is not peer reviewed. Because that is out there. We've just seen a survey done, that partly a result of our initiative, of editorial board practices across the entire AAUP membership. There was something like an 85% reply rate to this survey. And one of the things we find is, you know, there are presses out there that are publishing works that have editorial boards that only ever vote on about 30% of the titles. There are presses out there that are university presses, which for very good reasons are publishing what are essentially trade books. But they're not peer reviewed. They're doing it because they desperately need the revenue to make the whole rest of the system work. But all we're saying is we're in a reputation business. We want to make it very clear. These are our standards. We're being very transparent about them. And we're going to tell you when we apply these standards to our work. That's it. So sorry, if you can tell, I preach about this. So I didn't mean to. I don't want to, so we had an exercise in line for you, but it's already after the hour. So here's I want to say one thing and then ask one thing, and then we'll go. One thing I want to say is, this is an amazing team. It is just an amazing team, and we have such amazing people working for this initiative. On our oversight committee, people who step forward to volunteer an hour a month that they probably don't have, plus all the work they have to do before the meetings to make this happen and to keep us honest and to ask us tough questions and to move us forward. An editorial board of people, one of whom is a provost, who are totally engaged, incredibly creative, and really, really focused on answering the question, how do we make this press have serious impact on the colleges that are investing in us? And a team of people at Michigan and Amherst that I am incredibly proud to work with. So I thank them for the progress that we've made. All of it is down to them. I just get to stand up and talk. So thank you, team. Thank you, everybody. And the thing we want to ask you is, the exercise is going to be, we need your input. These are the three audiences that we know we have to constantly be engaging with. Beth is the person primarily responsible for engaging with faculty authors. I'm the person who's sort of taking on the role of engaging with, like I'm showing up at the CIC Chief Academic Officers meeting and dealing with this question about, hey, you know, tell us what we need to do to get this to be the standard on your campus. And Becky is a librarian. She lives in library world. She speaks librarian. So she is basically our #1 diplomat out to the world of libraries. Please, when you go to the reception, we're going to crash the reception even though we didn't pay the registration fee, so that if you have ideas for us about how to engage these audiences, please talk to us, because we are just really eager to get this right. Okay? Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you.